In this episode, we're going to be doing 3 debates, and how it works is there's going to be 1v1 with a debate. You're going to hear 2 players. Each person's going to have a rationale as to why they think that this player is the better rookie, and then there's a judge that decides. And this is the perfect time because so many of you are doing your rookie draft. So we're going to start off with our first debate. I am the judge, and it's going to be Joe versus Dustin. It's going to be Dustin in one corner with Matthew Golden and Joe in the other corner with Emeka Egbuka. So who wants to go first?
I'll let Joe go first since he's going to lose.
Oh, very confident on Dustin. Very interesting. So my case for Emeka Egbuka here is Egbuka holds the Ohio State record for career receptions with 205 and with 2,000-yard seasons, including 81 catches for 1,011 yards and 10 touchdowns last year. And that's despite playing alongside elite talents like Marvin Harrison Jr., Jeremiah Smith, and he maintained high target rates and was efficient on a per route basis, which shows his ability to produce in a crowded offense, because I'm sure that's going to be something that you consider there, Dustin, being that they have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, who they drafted last year as well. But, Egbuka is really touted highly for his route running ability. He's got exceptional footwork, his timing and ability to create separation as well. And that particularly comes in through the slot position, which is where I see him fitting into the Bucs offense here, kind of the Chris Godwin role of last year. And then, his ability to get open quickly, I think is going to work really well with the Bucs pass heavy offense. Baker is also a guy that likes to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and it makes Egbuka a guy that should get a decent amount of targets and have a decent amount of volume as well, and somebody you're going to want for PPR leagues.
Yeah, I think you brought up some valid points I was going to bring up. Let's start with the slot role position. That is where he's going to play. He played 80% of his routes from the slot last year. That's a high number. That is the Chris Godwin role in that offense. Chris Godwin just signed a 3-year deal with the Bucs, so he's probably not going anywhere. Maybe in 27 he's got a club option for this year. Next year, Chris Godwin's there. That also limits when Egbuka's on the field, because if he's not playing on the outside in 2 wide receiver sets, it's going to be Mike Evans and let's say Chris Godwin or Jalen McMillan. It's not going to be Egbuka. I just don't think Egbuka is going to get the targets because it is a crowded offense. They still have Mike Evans for this year. If Mike Evans wants to play another year, Tampa Bay is going to sign him for a year. They're not going to let him go anywhere else. He's not going to go anywhere else. If he wants to play, it'll be in Tampa Bay, so he could be there next year. He's a restricted free agent after this year because he only signed a 1-year deal, but I think he might sign another if he wants to. If he doesn't, then you still have Godwin. You still have Jalen McMillan there, who played well in the slot when Godwin was out. So I just think there's a pathway for targets. You still have Cade Otton. You have Baker Mayfield, who's not necessarily a young quarterback. He's got a deal. He'll be there for a while. I just don't. He's 30 years old. He'll be there till 26. He's an unrestricted free agent 27. So long term, I just don't see it. I think Egbuka is a talented receiver. He did great in college, but now we're talking about the pros. He's not going to have the pathway. So when we look at Matthew Golden, a guy who only plays 23% of his snaps last year.
He's going to have the pathway?
Yeah, who's in front of Matthew Golden at the Packers offense?
Okay.
Christian Watson, who can't stay healthy. Romeo Doubs, who is good but not great. Jaden Reed, who's a gadget player. Wicks. I mean, they have no one there. He has a clear pathway to play in week 1. He plays on the outside. He only played 23% of his snaps in the slot last year. So he's going to be an outside guy. Now, Matthew Golden's 5'11", Emeka Egbuka 6'1". So you would assume Emeka Egbuka being taller would be better contested catches. Nope, Matthew Golden is 70% contested catch rate versus Egbuka, 58%. Let's talk about yards after the catch, which you would assume would, again, be Egbuka's thing. It is 6 yards to 4.8 for Matthew Golden, so not that bad. Matthew Golden last year, 58 targets, 41 receptions, 625 yards, 8 touchdowns, compared to Egbuka, 88 targets, 65 receptions, 825 yards, 9 touchdowns. So very similar numbers. Emeka Egbuka has 3 drops last year, Matthew Golden only 2. So when we're talking about the pathway, here's where it's at. This year, I think Matthew Golden gets filled. Then next year, Watson and Dobbs are going to be free agents. Christian Watson can't stay healthy anyway. So they're free agents after this year. Dontavian Wicks, there's a restricted free agency tender offer that could be out there. And then Jaden Reed's gone after 27. So if you're talking dynasty long term, Matthew Golden could be the guy. Everyone knows the Packers haven't drafted a wide receiver in the first round since, who knows when. It was a big deal at the draft. They came out, made this big deal about selecting Matthew Golden. He was there. He was hyped up. He wants to be there. Egbuka seems fine with Tampa Bay. I just don't see the pathway to being relevant this year or down the road. I think you're going to have to wait 3 years for Egbuka to be what everybody expects Egbuka to be this guy he was in Ohio State. I think Golden can prove it this year and will be the guy going forward, attached to Jordan Love, who is a young, very good quarterback who I think is just as good as Baker, who is also younger, who has a contract farther out than Baker does. So when you're looking at it, when you're looking at separation score, it's Matthew Golden compared to Egbuka. I just think everything to me says they're really close in terms of talent, but when it comes to production and pathway to production this year and in the future, it all favors Matthew Golden over Egbuka.
Interesting. It's interesting you mentioned the contested catch rate. I think part of that is Egbuka is such a great route runner. He creates so much separation. He doesn't have to. Part of the concern for me with Matthew Golden is dude runs a 4.29, and he can't even create that separation to where he's got to do the contested catches. Then also, you mentioned, shouldn't the guy who also runs 4.29 be better at the yards after the catch? I mean, he's not even that explosive. Sure, he's proved he could, in his underpants run a fast 40, but it doesn't show up on tape. And, Egbuka is a much more of a polished player. And I do think there is a chance, do the Bucs move Godwin back to the outside? It was really Liam Cohen who decided to put Chris Godwin in the slot. And being that they did take Egbuka four picks ahead of Matthew Golden in the first round, maybe that is their vision, is Egbuka in the slot and Chris Godwin on the outside.
I mean, it could be. Well, let's get back to the separation because there aren't great college stats for separation scores. It's not something teams release or track. So I looked at what I could find. So FF Today has a separation score. They gave Matthew Golden a 5.5 out of 6. They gave Egbuka a 5 out of 6. So by their metrics, Matthew Golden gets more separation than Egbuka. So we can say, it's tough because it's by their grades and not necessarily by a statistic that's out there because it just doesn't exist in the college world. But by their grade, and I trust their process, they're saying Matthew Golden is a better separator than Egbuka. And even if Egbuka is, let's say, the 2 on that team, but it's Mike Evans and Egbuka, and he surpasses McMillan and Chris Godwin, you still have Cade Otton. You still have the running backs who do great pass catching. As much as Rachaad White is not a good rusher, he's a good pass catcher. Bucky Irving's still there. The volume of passing and the volume of targets just isn't going to be there. Where you have a Packers team that wants to throw the ball, they ran the ball a ton last year. I think they'll be a little more pass heavy with Matthew Golden, but there's just no one in front of them. Everyone's going, Mike Evans is the one in Tampa Bay. You ask anybody who's the number 1 in Green Bay, they're going to go, Matthew Golden? Because there's just no one else there. It's a clear 1 is Mike Evans. I think it's going to be a clear 1 Matthew Golden. I think the pathway to being the 1 is quicker and easier for Matthew Golden in a team of the Packers who just don't have anybody else, who have these other guys who are just meh or can't stay healthy.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I just don't think that Golden is probably going to be their top guy. I just don't see him as a number 1 because he's so small, and concerns me about his durability just for, the course of his longevity. And we're talking about Dynasty here. I know, guys like Devonta Smith have done it, and he's also pretty small, but he also has a guy, like AJ Brown to play alongside, where that's where I think Golden could fall a little short, because he is going to be forced to be the wide receiver 1 for the Green Bay Packers. And he's going to be that vertical deep threat. And I'm not so convinced about Jordan Love either. He's very boomer bust. He's inconsistent, had a great 2023. I know last year he was injured, so it was an up and down year for him. I don't know. I think right now I would take Baker in that Bucs passing offense. And I think there's room for Egbuka to get 8+ targets a game in that offense.
8+ targets seems like a massive leap for me. I agree.
Well,
I think Baker.
You keep mentioning Cade Otton. That guy was only relevant after Godwin got hurt.
I agree, but he's still going to get some targets. Let's just say if Matthew Golden is the number 1 for the Packers, he's going to see 80 targets. That's what Dontayvion Wicks saw in 18 games last year with regular and postseason. He saw 80 targets. I think he's closer to probably the 90 range. If you look at the Buccaneers, if you're going to say he's the 2 on Tampa, that would have been
the 3.
Let's say, the 3, Jalen McMillan, 62 targets.
I mean, it really matters about how far Chris Godwin is coming along, and how ready he is. There is a chance that Godwin's not going to be ready. Egbuka will be the number 2.
I think Godwin's ready. I just say the pathway to relevant targets. I think 8 per game is a lot to expect from Egbuka. I think he maybe sees 4, maybe 5. And I don't think there's going to be a ton of opportunities. I think he's going to play very limited snaps. I wouldn't be surprised if Emeka Egbuka plays under 50% of the snaps most of this year, whereas Matthew Golden's played 80 to 90% of the snaps most of the season.
Well, then that's always a draft pick if they only use him that sparingly.
I think it's a pick towards the future, but again, you're looking at a Baker Mayfield who's probably done in 2 years. You're looking at a team that's going to have
2 years. Dude's 30. He could at least play till he's 35.
Only got a contract. He's a free agent in 27. So are they going to re-sign a 32-year-old? Probably not.
Well, that's the bell, gentlemen. It was a very contested debate. As the judge here, I'll try to look at both sides. On Joe's side, I will say I think you did a good argument with Emeka Egbuka as far as his role in the offense. You guys didn't really talk ADP that much. These guys are really, really close. I mean, this is if you look at, I'm just going to check it right now just to be sure. I want to say the last time I checked, Matthew Golden was ahead, but not by that much as far as rookie rankings go. You've got on Fantasy Pros here, you've got Emeka Egbuka as actually no, and they have Emeka Egbuka based on what I'm seeing here in PPR leagues based on Dynasty rankings. Emeka Egbuka is actually wide receiver 3 at number 1 at the 1.7. With Golden at the 1.12 at wide receiver 4. So I actually surprised by that. I thought I saw something earlier that said otherwise. But I think with Egbuka, I think this has more to do with Jalen McMillan. I disagree with Dustin on the fact that Egbuka is not going to get opportunities. I think he's going to get opportunities right away. And with the idea of Godwin getting healthy, I don't know where he's coming with this whole Baker Mayfield being old thing. I think that's ridiculous.
He's 30 years old. He's got a contract for 2 more years. That's it.
He'll resign. I mean, he's not ancient, and he's not like he's 36, 37 years old. So I think that pass-heavy offense would be really good for him. As far as Golden goes on Dustin's side, you are right. There is not a dominant wide receiver 1 when it comes to the Packers. One thing you didn't mention that I think there is a lot of appeal is Jordan Love had a lot of deep ball connections with Dontavian Wicks, and if they plan on using Golden in a straight line speed, I could see him really stretching the field for the Packers and getting some of those long touchdown passes. Ultimately, it's hard because I ranked Golden higher in my rookie ranking, so ultimately I'm going to give Dustin a win. But Joe, you did a very good job debating, and I liked your arguments better than Dustin. No,
I think Emeka Egbuka is the more talented, athletic in position. Like if you were said in the perfect offense, I just don't love the landing spot for Emeka Egbuka. I think it's just too crowded of an offense, too many mouths to feed there.
All right, so on to our second debate. Coming off the bench, going up against Dustin here. This is who is the better rookie. And just to clarify here for those who are watching, because some may feel this is, David versus Goliath here. This is considering, in Dustin's word, if you got them for free. So this is the idea of based on where they're drafted, where you'd want them. So it's going to be quarterback Jaxson Dart in my corner versus quarterback Tyler Shough for Dustin, which if you want to read more about that analysis, he has an article coming out here in a few days. Dustin, you're the guest. I'll give you the option. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'll let you go first. I'll let you explain your Jaxson Dart fantasies.
Okay. Oh, please. All right, so talking about Jaxson Dart here, who I believe is the best Dynasty rookie quarterback of the class. 6'2", 223. If you look at his time in Ole Miss, he only got better over time under Lane Kiffin as head coach. His completion percentage increased from 62.4% to 65.1% to 69.3% in his final year. Look at the past 2 seasons. In his junior season, he had 3,364 passing yards, 23-5 touchdown interception ratio, with 389 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. On his senior season, he had 4,279 passing yards, 29-6 touchdown interception ratio, with 495 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. So as you can see, he's a dual threat player. He fits the modern day NFL where not only can he throw, but he can also be a threat in the running game. You've got to remember, this is all against SEC competition, where you would argue besides maybe the Big Ten, that's the premier conference in college football, whereas Shough played at 1 year in Louisville and then was all over the place. Dart, he gets paired up with one of the better offensive minds in football with Brian Daboll. Daboll saw flashes of Josh Allen, and he can sit until he's ready, which I think is the most important part. Sometimes rookies get get thrust into the starting role, and they're not ready for it. They've got Russell Wilson, they got Jameis Winston. They can take their time, and when Jaxson Dart is ready, he can go into that offense. Oh, and by the way, he's going to have one of the best receiving options in the National Football League with Malik Neighbors. I mean, you can't really get anybody better than that with how young he is. As I said, Dart is a modern quarterback who can escape the pass rush, be able to make plays outside the pocket. He's just a much more dynamic player. Shough, on the other hand, he played in college football for 7 seasons. And besides last season, the most amount of games he played was 7 games due to many season-ending injuries that he suffered. And you're going to say, because I already know where you stand on this, that, oh, well, he's in New Orleans and he has a pass to start right away. So what? He got drafted as a second-round pick. I feel good and well that between the two of them, Jaxson Dart will be starting in 2026. I can't say the same thing about Tyler Shough. He could very well have this 1-year trial, and then the Saints go ahead and draft a quarterback in the first round. I can't say the same thing about Dart. Dart, well, they traded up to get this guy. So long as Daboll and Shane are in the front office, which more than likely they will be, Dart is going to have a long path to be able to succeed in the NFL and get his starting opportunity. At the end of the day, if you drafted Dart or Shough, you are not relying on either of these guys to win you your leagues. Maybe in a Superflex league, maybe you consider it. But ultimately, these are future investments. And the ceiling for Dart is astronomically higher than Tyler Shough.
Here's the deal. You talked about Dart's going to start in 26. That's only because he might not play in 25. So you're telling me you're basically taking a rookie next year? Is that like, just go, hey, Tyler Shough versus whoever is a rookie in next year's class, because you don't know what he is. Who's going to start in 27? It could be neither. It could be both. It could be one or the other. Like, we don't know the future of these guys. What I want with my dynasty assets is a guy who's going to play this year. You win by scoring points this year. I don't win by having guys who score points next year. It's not retroactive. Well, if they start next year, that made it a good pick this year and you're going to win extra games. Doesn't matter. Let's talk about some of the points you brought up. He's a running quarterback. He is. He does have the mobility. That's fine. I'll concede that. I can see that Jaxson Dart is a slightly better quarterback than Tyler Shough, but I'll take Tyler Shough over him. Let's get back. You said SEC competition. What did he do in the SEC? Did he win championships? No, he put up decent numbers. It's not like he lit the world on fire. He had 29 touchdowns. That's moderate in the college game. Tyler Shough had 23, so it's not like he blew Tyler Shough out of the water. And then you talked about Brian Daboll being this offensive mind. Let's just face it. Brian Daboll had 1 year with Josh Allen and has done 0 since. He stuck with Daniel Jones, signed Daniel Jones to a big contract, and then cut Daniel Jones. You're telling me that history, that 1 year with Josh Allen is a sign that he's the coach of the future, that coaching staff is worth it? I'd rather take the coaching staff in New Orleans with Kellen Moore and those guys there who have proven it, who have worked with Justin Herbert and shown good success. They've worked with Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott. All the guys they've worked with have had success. Brian Daboll had 1 year with Josh Allen where success, and he's had 3 years now with the Giants of no success. So history is not on Daboll's side, him being this offensive genius. He might not even be there next year. So that means they're going to get a new coach who might not be inherent to Jaxson Dart as a starter. Yes, they traded up for him. Whip-de frickin' do. Draft capital doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where you get drafted. You could get drafted in the 6th round and be a starter. Tom Brady, Dak Prescott was drafted late. It doesn't really matter where you're drafted. Now, let's get into Tyler Shough. Let's look at, you talked about the stats, but let's look at some of the metrics. Completion percentage. Jaxson Dart, 64.2. Tyler Shough, 62.7. Adjusted completion percentage, 73.7.
69.3. What are you looking at?
I'm looking at their stats on Pro Football Focus. Let's talk about adjusted completion percentage. 73.7 for Dart, 74.2 for Shough. Big time throw percent, 5.9 for Dart, 4.6 for Shough. So Dart beats him out there. Turnover worthy plays, 2.8% for Dart, 2.7 for Shough. Percent of pressures turned into sacks. That means how much they're able to avoid the sack either by rushing, which you say Jaxson Dart is, or throwing it away or avoiding the sack. You want a low number here. Jaxson Dart, 15.5. What's Tyler Shough? 14.4. So advantage Shough there. Average time to throw. So you could say, well, bad line.
What competition did he play against?
Let's talk about time to throw. Tyler Shough, 2.83 seconds. Jaxson Dart, 2.76. So pretty much similar time to throw. Passer rating. This is the NFL passer rating. 105.4 for Dart, 100.3 for Shough. I'm not saying Shough is the talent in college that Jaxson Dart was. But here's the big thing that weighs in Shough's favor. He is going to start week 1 in the NFL. And yes, he may not have a Malik Neighbors, but I will take the team in New Orleans who has Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Juwan Johnson, and Alvin Kamara. Like, that's a better team than Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy and Daniel Bellinger and Wan'Dale Robinson. And, they have Brandon Cooks in New Orleans too, who's better than Sterling Shepard. The team there is better. Daniel Jones did not do well in New York, and part of that was the offensive line. What did the Giants do this year to fix their offensive line? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. What did the Saints do? Well, they drafted a guy in the first round last year. They drafted a guy in the first round this year, and they signed 2 other pieces to push their competition. They said, hey, our line was bad. It was just as bad as the Giants. They said, hey, we're going to go out and fix this because we know that's an issue. The Giants said, our line's bad. We'll trade up for a quarterback. Doesn't matter who's back there if they have no time to throw. So give me a team that's got a coaching staff that has proven track record with quarterbacks in Kellen Moore, and it's Tyler Moore and a couple other guys who names escape me, versus Brian Daboll, who's done nothing. And we just keep going, well, he had a year with Josh Allen. Cool, he's done nothing since. 1 year is a fluke. 2-3 years is a pattern of him not being great with quarterbacks.
What did Kellen Moore do? Kellen Moore had Jalen Hurts, who was already established. Herbert was already established. And he didn't even do that well with Brandon Staley as the head coach.
What about Dak Prescott? What about Dak Prescott when he was number 3 quarterback when he was healthy? QB3 on the year when he was healthy.
Who was his offensive coordinator when Dak Prescott had his best year?
Kellen Moore.
No, Kellen Moore wasn't there.
Who was there?
He was in L.A.
I don't think he was.
2 years ago when Dak had his best year, I'm pretty positive he was in L.A.
I will check that. I'm just saying I will go with the team that but he went to LA.
McCarthy.
It's not like he all of a sudden went there and was just all of a sudden bad. Like,
to me, I don't know where you're coming this from, because to me, what Daboll was able to do with Daniel Jones in the first year he did is exactly why he's actually good. He was able to have Daniel Jones throw for over 3,000 yards, have a 15-5 ratio, and run for 708 yards and 7 touchdowns, and was able to beat the Vikings in the playoffs.
But you're going, hey, he had a good year. Yeah, Daniel Jones had a good year, but then what's he done since? He hasn't done it. What
do you mean? He tore his ACL. He's fractured goods.
What's more likely? That Daboll finishes the season or doesn't finish the season as Giants head coach?
If there's promise, he'll stay.
I don't think he will.
They're going to let him. Why would the Maras let Dart? Why would they let him trade up to get Dart to then just start all over? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, they could, but the Giants are a very methodical organization. They don't just fly off the handle.
If you talk to most NFL experts and people in the know, they will say that Brian Daboll is on the hot seat. And I'm just saying, I'll take a guy who's going to start week 1. We may not see Jaxson Dart at all this year. If Russell Wilson is what we saw from Russell Wilson last year, he'll start all year, and we won't see Jaxson Dart. I want to know in Dynasty if my guy is good or not, because here's the deal.
Kevin Shough is a wasted pick. I hate to tell you.
How is he a waste? No, he's not a
waste.
wasted pick, because here's what happened with Jaxson Dart. You're going to draft him, you're going to put him on your taxi squad, and then next year you're going to activate him and have no clue what he is. I'll know in 6 weeks what Tyler Shough is.
Yeah, and you'll find out it's a waste.
But if it is a waste, I can move on. I don't have this.
It's a bad pick.
But again, we're saying not.
Chris Olave that you talk about may not even be on the roster.
No, Chris Olave. He
doesn't want to be a New Orleans Saint.
He does want to be a New Orleans Saint.
No, he does not.
He hasn't come out and requested a trade. Where are you getting that from? That's just hearsay from X that you're picking up. All I'm saying is
thoughts that happen, and you're talking about the here and now. Malik Neighbors is the best piece out of all of that. Juwan Johnson and Rashid Shaheed. Shaheed's a free agent coming up. Brandon Cooks is ancient. And Alvin Kamara isn't going to be – he's ancient too. He's like 29, 30 years old. How much longer is he going to be there?
I'll admit –
Neighbors is going to be there
Malik Neighbors is the 1. But I think Olave's the 2. I think Shaheed's the 3. I think Kamara's the 4. I think you got to go to 5 or 6 before you find another Giants player. So, yes, you may have the top, but as a group, they're better. And they fixed their offensive line. All I know is that you saying Tyler Shough is a bad pick, and we're going based if you got him for free, because I think where you're getting Shough in your rookie drafts, the value is so great. I'll know in 6 weeks if Shough is good or not. You won't know squat about Jaxson Dart. You'll have a J.D. McCarthy situation where you're going into
That's a good thing.
How is that a good thing?
Because even if you want to get rid of him, there's still the possible suspense and intrigue that you could sucker somebody in your league and trade him and get something for him. After 6 weeks, your cost, your value for Shough is going to go right out the window.
Unless Shough's good. If Shough's good, then I kill your value. Because here's the deal.
He won't be a premier quarterback. He's like saying, I'd rather have Derek Carr over like Jalen Hurts. That's not even a question.
If Shough is a valuable fantasy starter in a 2-quarterback league, I have more value than you than Jaxson Dart will ever have, because even if he is a QB2, let's say he's QB17, let's say he's Trevor Lawrence. Let's just say he's Trevor Lawrence in that QB15 range every year. If he's, it could be, you don't know, because we don't know what the future holds. None of us are, are clairvoyant. We don't have crystal balls behind us. You've got nothing behind you for sure. I may have a crystal ball. You ain't got nothing behind you. We know that. All we know is, here's the deal. If Shough is better, if he's QB 15 this year, let's say he's QB 20 this year, he already has a season over Jaxson Dart. Jaxson Dart has to be QB 1 for the next 5 years. Why Tyler Shough is QB 15? Because I get an extra year, I initially have more value. Everyone
What does that
saying,
make any sense?
You're
playing Dynasty. You're not playing in redraft. What does it matter what he does in the initial year?
I need points this year. I'm not playing for next year. I'm playing for this year.
Why do you need to know?
What do you mean? Why do you need now? Because I want to win this year.
Well, you're not drafting Shough to win now this year.
If you're playing for next year, don't draft Jaxson Dart and trade Jaxson Dart for a first-round pick next year.
I would rather have Milroe than Tyler Shough.
No, you're out of your mind.
Here's the deal. At least has a huge ceiling. I could care less if he plays this year. Next year, he might play when Darnold's not here, and he has this immense ceiling.
Then take Jaxson Dart and trade him for a first-round pick next year, because you're going, I just want next year's pick. Because I don't need points this year. You're going, I don't need points this year. I'll take points next year.
That's not
true. And then take that first-round pick, I'll take points in 2027. I want points this year. I win games this year by getting points this year. If your guy's not playing, you're getting 0 points, and you're just stuck up a roster spot. If Tyler Shough is bad,
you could probably put him on your taxi squad, and you'll be fine.
I can put Tyler Shough on my taxi squad, and I'm still fine.
What says that Tyler Shough can even stay healthy for a 10, 12, 15-year career? He's broke his collarbone twice and his fibula. He's only played 1 season that he's actually been any good.
So you're an injury predictor now? You probably said the same thing about Christian McCaffrey 2 years ago. I can't stay healthy. Saquon Barkley can't stay healthy. All of a sudden puts up a bazillion points, hurdling guys backwards.
That's not the same thing.
It is the same thing. If a guy's injured, if he has injuries for multiple seasons, you go, what's to say he's going to stay healthy? You don't know. Every injury is different. One injury does not predict another injury. That's just not the way it works.
At the end of the day, if you're going to be selecting a quarterback, I would advise those out there that you take Jaxson Dart in the first round. If you don't take him, don't take Shough. Whatever you do, don't take him in the second round. If you want to take quarterback, take Milroe. I was Shough. I would just not take it all.
You're going with pick. I'm not saying you're choosing between Dart and Shough at the 107 and 80.
No, I know. I'm just why I'm specifically saying it.
Here's what I say. Either way, they're going in your taxi squad, right? Most likely, Shough is not on your active roster. He's in your taxi squad. So is Jaxson Dart. Here's the deal. 6 weeks, I know if Shough is good or not, and if he's not good, I just go, he's still on my tax squad. Doesn't matter. It's the same. If he's not good, he's scoring the same amount of points as Jaxson Dart because Jaxson Dart's not playing. But then I know, and I can move on next year. I free him off my roster. Here's the problem. You're going to get to the end of the season and go, I think Jaxson Dart's good. Man, now I can't put him in my taxi squad because I can only put rookies there. Now I'm going to move him into my bench. I hope he starts. And then he could start in 26, and Jaxson Dart could be bad. We see it all the time. These guys come in the first round and not good. Kenny Pickett, anyone? Let's talk about, you mess up.
He started right away, too.
He did start right away, and he wasn't good.
And you would have drafted Kenny Pickett. You would have been happy because he gave you points right away.
Because you gave you points, but you know what it is. And I want to know what my guys are so I can make a decision and helps me plan my future. I don't want a big question mark on my roster for a year. I might as well just trade him for a pick next year. Just trade Jaxson Dart for a first-round pick next year because that's basically what you're getting.
Patience is a virtue.
The debate should be Jaxson Dart versus a 2026 first-round pick. That's what the debate should be because that's what it is. You don't know what he is. I'll know what Tyler Shough is 6 weeks. And I'm not saying, and you're going, Tyler Shough's a 1-year deal. Tyler Shough might be good. He has just as much chance of being good as Jaxson Dart. They fixed their offensive line. He has a better team around him than the Giants. He's a better coaching staff, and his numbers were just as good as Jaxson Dart in college.
All right, guys. With that, that's the bell here. You guys make some definitely intriguing arguments here, Dustin. I gotta hand it to you, Dustin. I think you made a more of a compelling argument than I originally thought. I know we floated this idea, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" But Steve obviously makes a compelling case on the side of Jaxson Dart and the Giants. But where I disagree is, I think this Jaxson Dart pick does afford Dayball, Joe Shane at least this season and the opportunity for next year as well. I think it automatically buys them time. Otherwise, like Steve said, why in the world would the ownership, allow them to take a first round quarterback if they weren't going to be the plan? And this was Dayball's guy. So if Dayball's not going to be there to develop and ultimately coach him through the process, it's a wasted pick. And I don't see why they would allow him to trade back up into the first round to take it Jaxson Dart. But I think if this wasn't fantasy, I would agree with you, Dustin. Like Tyler Shough on paper, like he's the better NFL quarterback. He's more NFL ready right now, just with his experience. It's still crazy to me that this guy was the backup to Justin Herbert in Oregon his freshman year. Like that's just how long he's been around in college. And to Steve's point, like I don't know if I can say like Shough is officially an injury risk. Like those are just like fluke injuries to me. Those aren't like continually, joint issues or that are just popping up over and over again. I don't like just because he had those injuries in college, they aren't like ones that I'd be concerned about happening again. I think they're just more fluke injuries as they're, broken bones or whatever. But I mean, with that being said, though, I mean, this is Dynasty fantasy and the guys that have the higher ceiling, and there's no doubt I'd rather just take the flyer on Jaxson Dart.
Woo-hoo-hoo! Point for me.
Point for you. Point for you in the pre-draft biases.
Oh, brother. All right, so our last debate is featuring myself and Joe. It's going to be Omarion Hampton versus Quinshon Judkins. Joe and Dustin's the judge. So, Joe, you take it away.
All right, Steve. I know people might call me crazy here because I do think Quinshon Judkins will be the better dynasty prospect. Everyone is in love with Omarion Hampton, thinks he's the better guy. But one thing that is concerning is, one, I think the landing spot with the Los Angeles Chargers. I know it's Jim Harbaugh and, the Baltimore offense, which is the heavy rushing offense. And I get he's going to have plenty of opportunities, but at least for this first year, Dustin will like this. Hampton, I don't know if this first year, I mean, I don't know what to expect from him. Najee Harris is there. They brought him in free agency. It's not like they're just going to go ahead and not give opportunities to Najee Harris and just give the keys to Omarion Hampton to be the lead back of this offense. Plus, I think, his upright running style is a little concerning to me. He runs high, could lead to injuries and questions longevity for Dynasty here. And, Steve, it's so interesting. In your argument with Tyler Shough and Jaxson Dart, you were saying the level of competition. Where does Omarion Hampton play? Oh, yeah, the ACC with North Carolina. And guess where Quinshon Judkins was able to play? SEC and the Big Ten, the two powerhouses of college football. So that's kind of where I'm going to start here. Judkins was selected 36 overall in the second round by the Cleveland Browns. And look, they were a team that was looking for somebody to take over, give the keys to somebody to be this lead running back. Nick Chubb, got injured. They're moving on from him. Kareem Hunt and Deonta Foreman are no part of there. And guess who's really left in terms of, competition for Quinshon Judkins? You got Jerome Ford, who's a good change of pace back. They did draft Dylan Sampson in the fourth round as well for some competition. But Kevin Stefanski's offense has got a track record for heavy run production opportunities. Just go back to Nick Chubb in 2022. He had 329 opportunities and touches in that year that, he was one of the top running backs. And Judkins, with his size at 6 foot, 221 pounds, is just, he's got the body style to potentially be that workhorse back. And honestly, a lot of people have him compared to Nick Chubb as an NFL comparison. We know how valuable Nick Chubb was, in fantasy football and in Dynasty as well. I know you're going to say, yeah, sure. Hampton ran a better 40 time than Quinshon Judkins by 0.2 seconds. Judkins ran a 4.48. Hampton ran a 4.46 in the 40. But I do like Judkins' burst and acceleration better his 10-yard split was 1.51, which honestly lines up with guys that are 20 to 30 pounds lighter than him. So I think that was pretty impressive. And, Judkins dominated Ole Miss and Ohio State. He posted 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons, including 1,567 yards and 16 touchdowns as a freshman in the SEC at Ole Miss. And then last year, he had 1,060 yards with 14 touchdowns at Ohio State. And that was while splitting time with Trevion Henderson. He's got a career total of 50 touchdowns, 42 games, and he averaged over 100 scrimmage yards per game in the SEC and the Big Ten, which highlights his ability to handle a heavy workload and produced at the highest level, which I think is easier to project that he could produce at the next highest level in the NFL here versus Hampton, who played at the ACC and was shown trucking, the weak defenders in the ACC there, and everyone's so impressed because he's breaking all these tackles. And then, Judkins' ball security as well. He only fumbled 3 times in 3 seasons, which just shows how reliable this guy is. And then he's also, I know he wasn't utilized heavily at Ohio State in the passing game, but he does have the ability to turn into a 3-down back. He had 59 catches, 442 yards, and 5 touchdowns over his collegiate career.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Omarion Hampton goes, I don't know why you don't like the landing spot in LA. I think Jim Harbaugh's system, we know, revolves around running the ball. You look what J.K. Dobbins was able to do last year, having, what seemed like a career year for him. I understand Najee Harris is there, but he's on a 1-year deal. More than likely, Najee Harris is going to be packing his bag and going somewhere else after the season. And it's going to be Omarion Hampton. What's great about Omarion Hampton is he's purely a dual threat running back. We can't say that about Quinshon Judkins. Does he have the possibility to do that? Yes. But with Hampton, we know it for sure. Over the past 2 seasons, I understand you're saying, well, he played in the ACC. But under that logic, then you would downgrade Ashton Genty and what he did in the Mountain West, because that conference isn't as good. I think you just have a bias against North Carolina running backs because Javonte Williams got drafted by the Denver Broncos, and he didn't turn out so well for your Denver Broncos. So you have a bad taste in your mouth when it comes to North Carolina running backs. But anyways, if you look at it over the past 2 seasons, he has the production, over 1,500 rushing yards per season with 15 touchdowns each. And last season, he had 319 receiving yards with 2 receiving touchdowns. He ran 4.46 at 220 pounds, which is really impressive. It's a great combination of speed and power. I mean, you talk to me, I watch the highlights. I don't see much. I don't know what tape you're watching. The guy, is able to break those arm tackles and even have the wiggle to have that breakaway speed. So to me, when it comes to Judkins, don't get me wrong, I do like Judkins, but I think you're kind of understating the Dylan Sampson selection. I mean, Sampson in his own right was a very interesting prospect being drafted in the 4th round. I think it limits Judkins' upside. Had it just been Judkins going to the Browns with Jerome Ford there, then you're talking about, okay, maybe he has, the lion's share of everything. He'll be there on 1st and 2nd down. Will he be as involved in 3rd down or not? Where I know Hampton is going to be on the field on every single play after this year. I get it. Harris will be there for this year, but we're playing Dynasty. It doesn't matter per se what's happening just this year. And not to mention Hampton, you're talking about him getting a 5th-year option, being there for 5 years, so long as everything goes well. That's an extra year under a rookie contract where we know his situation. So don't get me wrong, I like Judkins. This is a pretty close debate, but at the end of the day, you for whatever reason have this disdain for North Carolina running backs, and you've been burned. So as a result, you don't think that Hampton's any good.
I don't think it is the North Carolina running backs. It really just was Hampton. Like I honestly just, everyone's oohing on over this guy. I wasn't that impressed. Like he doesn't really have that many like jukes. He just relies on his power and running forward. But the power, like you said, it was just against a competition in the ACC, which I don't value. At least with Ashton Genty, I know he plays in the Mountain West, but you got to see him in the playoff. And he had a really solid game against Penn State, who is a Big Ten team. So that was a big test for him. And the offensive line that he's running behind in the Mountain West isn't that great, and for him to still do what he did in that playoff game, that stood out to me in terms of Ashton Genty. But for Quinshon Judkins, I mean, it's interesting. They're relatively the same size. And like I said, Hampton ran a little bit faster, but at least I know right out of the gates that Judkins is ready to get 15 to 20 touches a game. He's, like you said, right out of the gate. Sure, maybe he doesn't have the third down role, but he's at least got the 15 to 20 touchdowns in the, right away behind a good Cleveland Browns offensive line and in that run-heavy Kevin Stefanski offense.
Did you have the same feeling about Jahmyr Gibbs when he was playing at Georgia Tech in the ACC? Because you don't like ACC running backs and what they're able to do, and as far as production goes.
Yeah, but Jahmyr Gibbs is a different player. I mean, he's a guy that's very elusive.
But you're
and
saying that you
speed.
don't like what players do in the ACC, so I'm just curious if you feel that applies across the board.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can, but I mean, this is strictly with Hampton and the ACC competition, and just a guy with like Judkins who did play at an elite level versus in the SEC and the Big Ten, who's just more tested and shown that he can be reliable back at the uppermost level, and that's why I'm more confident in him being the more NFL ready player.
Or what about Travis Etienne when he played at Clemson? Did that bother you at all?
Yeah, how well has Travis Etienne been doing?
I mean, he was injured for 1 year, but that was
he was injured right out of the gates.
Okay, but I mean, Omarion Hampton hasn't been injured
yet, but that's what I'm saying. He runs upright, and he's going to get tackled by a lot better players than he did at North Carolina. And with that,
who's going to be throwing the ball in Cleveland? How do you know they're not just going to stack the box? You've got like a quarterback roulette back there. I mean, what confidence do you have that teams just don't stack the box when it comes to Judkins?
Let them stack the box. I have confidence that Judkins will still succeed. I mean, look, I think most likely it'll be Joe Flacco starting, and he's gonna get the respect of defenses. He's shown that he can do it, especially with Kevin Stefanski. Flacco did really well, and he can handle that offense. So I wouldn't have any issue there. If it's not Flacco, it'll be Shedeur Sanders. That'll be the starting quarterback for the Browns.
All right, that's the bell. You had me until Shedeur Sanders, Joe. I like your point. Joe, you brought up, Judkins' college career and what he was able to do every year. I really liked the part of him, what he did last year, splitting time with Travion Henderson. You made a good point pointing those things out. The competition, only 3 fumbles. I think what you didn't bring up is that, and kind of Steve alluded to it, is the Browns are going to be probably a bad team, so there's probably not going to be a lot of opportunities late in games to run. I think they'll have to throw. If it is Flacco, I think that upgrades them, but if it is Kenny Pickett or Dylan Gabriel or maybe Shedeur Sanders, which I think is probably the least likely of the options, I think there's a chance that they don't have as much opportunity to extend drives. So I think that might limit his opportunities. Steve, you brought up the Najee Harris only being on a 1-year deal, and I think you're right. It is Hampton in Dynasty. We're talking about future success, and I think he's going to have more future success. You guys know I like people who are going to play this year, and I think Hampton's role will be decreased this year. He is maybe a dual threat, has a little bit more pass-catching pedigree, but I don't think Judkins is necessarily bad at that. Maybe Joe does have a bias against, North Carolina running backs. He does have a little bit of Devontae Williams, kind of feel. I agree with you, Joe. I don't think the competition necessarily matters a ton, but I do think, right, you're talking about the ACC, it's not necessarily the greatest, defenders, that he's got to get by. They're not talking about, the greatest coaches and scheme-wise, so it might be a little bit easier. I think you're right, Steve. I think there will be stack boxes for Judkins. I would have said going into this, I think it was Hampton clearly over Judkins. I think what swayed me, Joe, is I'm going to award you the win because I think you're right. What he was able to do to have similar stats in terms of touchdowns and yardage, but have almost 100 less carries than Hampton last year shows me that Judkins can do it with less. And I think if you gave him 150 carries last year, 192, whatever it was, versus 243, I think you've seen similar stats and similar production with less work for Judkins. So that's why I'm going to award Joe the win with Quinshon Judkins, because I think the point that he can do more with less touches and still produce at a high level with less touches is really what sold me.
Wow. Bravo, Joe. Getting the under the radar win